Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to our HEDNA at Home payment webinar series. My name is Mike Carlo. I'm very proud to be part of the HEDNA Board of Directors and grateful to everyone who has made the subject of payments so critical to this association and to the role of distribution. I'd like to start by thanking our payment sponsor, Adyen, for their continued support during this very intensely weird period of time. One of our panelists is from Adyen, and we really are very grateful, and we're grateful to our other sponsors throughout the year as well. And for those of you who are in the US, as an LA Dodger fan after last night's World Series, I'd like to thank Kevin Cash, the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, for making probably the worst decision in baseball playoff history. With that little LA Dodger promotion, I'd like to get this panel discussion. Before I introduce the panel, I'd just like to mention that if you have questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. I will be monitoring them and will be engaging with the panelists as appropriate during the presentation to ask those questions. Then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So in our preparation for the panel, we discussed that I probably have the surnames with the most difficult pronunciations in the history of HEDNA panels. So the panelists have agreed that it would be much better if I don't try to pronounce each of their names, although I think I got maybe 70 to 80% accuracy. I'd like to start with introducing Marija. Nakevska. There, I got one in from Adyen. Thank you, Marija. Now, Chiara is sort of like our HEDNA version of Cher. We only need to give a first name. Quaia, is that?
Perfect.
So Chiara, finally, after all these years. So Chiara is with us from Mastercard, and we have Ludovic Cacciapaglia.
Correct.
Close enough, who is our resident hotelier on the panel and also one of my fellow HEDNA Board of Directors members. And we're really excited to have this panel on an extremely pertinent, interesting, and ever-changing topic. So with that, I will be monitoring questions. I will mute myself and turn off my video so as not to distract from the panelists. And with that, I will turn it over to Marija to start the discussion. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mike. So just a moment to share the screen and yeah, let's start the session. So here we are. So Ludo, maybe you should start with introducing the agenda and yeah, from there.
Sure. So again, welcome everyone to this HEDNA webinar on contactless customer journey. So thank you again to Marija, Chiara, and Mike for putting this together. I think this is a key topic and will be an important part of what we do moving forward. So I think now more than ever, our guest expectation has changed and will continue to change. And the situation we're living with COVID is probably accelerating some of the trends we have been seeing in digitalization of the hotel experience. So hopefully today we put together a content that will be addressed with some high-level information on insights we have been seeing into contactless payments and usage of digital services into hotels. And we will try to give you also a view on how the experience is changing from hotel, how the customer journey is adapting, check-in processes, food service is impacted. So we'll try to go around the full customer journey, of a typical guest in a hotel, from pre-arrival down to checkout, and obviously a bit of a more focus on the payment side. And how this can change and how we need to adapt moving forward. So with that, Marija, you can go ahead with the insights.
Yeah. So the question is, what is going to change regarding the guest experience. That's what we're going to address in various ways. And here first, we are going through the insights. So maybe the first part is about Chiara going through all the, sorry, I'm looking through the slides, to going through all these insights that we are getting from the credit card side. Yeah, can you maybe comment on all these numbers that we're seeing here?
Yeah, definitely. So what you can see here is that the impact of COVID has definitely highlighted the ever-changing payment landscape and the way we shop and the way we pay. So definitely what you see in this slide, that is 79% of consumers worldwide are using contactless payment today, but also that specifically in the US, there was a 90% growth year over year in e-commerce for the month of May. So this is something that definitely COVID has accelerated. Now, consumer know now that what they plans, of course, the plans that they make for the next week, or next month, or next year, maybe to be need to be adjusted. So as well, they are looking for enhanced flexibility over their bookings. In addition, I would say, to a complete confidence over health and safety. But research shows that although consumer travel plans have been on hold in the immediate term, people still want to travel in the future. So what you can see here is 28% of consumer worldwide miss eating out, but also traveling. And I think this is a very important topic for us specific and for the industry. If you go in the next slide, what you will see here is that, look, in Mastercard, we have released the latest recovery insight. It's called the Travel Check-in Report. And what we do are based on analysis of anonymized and aggregated sales activity across our network. And our Recovery Insight report that was published, I think, at the beginning of September, has shown that there are signs of gradual recovery emerging that are encouraging, if you want, sign of future demand. So definitely, I think what is important to take out from this slide, that consumer sentiment around traveling again is also a positive sign, as travel has been and is constantly ranked as one of the most missed activity during this pandemic. So this is very important. If you go, sorry, Maria, to the next slide, what we can see here is that as we move towards the new normal, the story should not be how much people have stopped traveling. So definitely, but it will be how the travel behaviors most probably has changed. And we will see this most probably during the course of this webinar today. So I think it means that it's essential for hotel and travel provider to focus on today, as you can see here, domestic and regional traveler service efficiency and customer loyalty, that I think it's extremely important. So what you see in this slide is the recovery of T&E spend in July, of course, is a period of was a period of vacation and so on, but you definitely see that there are good signs, and people is willing and is willing to move around back again, I would say. In the next slide, what we're seeing is what are the, I would say, the recovery trends that we might expect, and what we saw. So on the airline side, definitely the capacity have dropped by 54%. On the hotel side, the occupancy has dropped, but less than, for example, on the airline side. And this has been, I would say, I think everyone realized, driven by domestic terms. So I think it is very important. And of course, on the travel agency side, has been the booking has been dropped the most, because what we realize as well, then when people are traveling domestically, they use less eventually travel agency, and this is mainly due for airline booking, most probably not always for hotel booking, that people still rely on travel agency. On the market, definitely on the domestic side, there are good signs of recovery in US, Europe, and China. It's not anymore now for Europe. I would say there is a kind of a contraction due to the COVID situation that we are unfortunately having again. I don't know if the second is the third wave, but unfortunately we are on it. Definitely staycation, so domestic traveler is something that everyone should leverage, and experiences shift to, I would say, rather than to most populated area to less congested area. And what we also see and we are experiencing is that corporate travel will go back, I would say, later. So travel budget have been cut, and also most of the conferences. Leisure definitely is still on, and we saw already that when people will travel again to see at least family and friends. And group travel and entertainment, most of the events have been postponed already to next year. This is what we see.
Okay, so we are going back to the question again. So what will change regarding the guest experience? And looking at hospitality revolves around the touch points with their guests. And we now have to take a look at all these touch points and find ways to reduce them practically. So there are several trends for looking at the recovery that we can analyze and summarize here. And also, they're going together with the insights that were presented. So first one is about the contactless experience. And that's something that will remain attractive to guests when they go back to travel. So use of digital tools to achieve touchless experiences, that definitely remains. Another one is like to hoteliers to have in mind that the demographics and dynamics will change. So younger people will be the first one to travel, to go out, because they're less impacted. So with that, again, if you want to address all the millennials and younger people, digital channels will be more attractive to them. That's for sure. And at last, again, hotels can look at all these digital ways of guest experiences into also optimizing operations, and with that to cut costs as well. So here, again, because we are all with the payments background, first one that we wanted to address here is the contactless payments. Looking through the trends about contactless payments and how COVID impacted that, we first took a look at the statistics shows that the cash withdrawals actually fell with 50% in March. That was very much commented and seen in Germany, which is a country which has a lot of cash preference during the years, and although there was like a lot of attempts to go to cards, now this year they also in Germany was seeing 50% drop in cash and actually preferring now cards. Another thing that happened around contactless payments was that governments supported by increasing the contactless limit that allowed now to have more of contactless transactions. And on the end, when we do some research, we see that 74% of respondents, or like 4 in 5 actually, will remain to use contactless payments when that comes to either a contactless card, NFC, or it comes to mobile payment methods as Alipay, not only Alipay, I'm talking about Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, and similar. So here, again, some insights from Chiara.
Yeah, perfect. So what we're seeing here is that, despite, I would say, the difference between region, definitely there was a trend of consumer moving to contactless and to pay either with with card or even with mobile, and this is a going trend. So definitely between 6 and 13% was the increase, and I think we think that it will still grow in the month in the next month. This has been driven as well in some of the region by the higher, I would say, limit of not eventually with paying with card, not requesting PIN. For example, as Mastercard, we do have in some of the region up to 50 euros, and it was very important as well because it was helping, and avoiding having the PIN, and everyone moving more now also onto the mobile side. So definitely it's a trend that will stay. What we also see is that people that have been converted, if you want, to contactless during COVID did not go back, I would say, to traditional form of payment or so I think this is very important. So there is no way back, but I would say a way forward. So you could only expect that this will increase.
Okay, and another one when it comes to contactless payments is the QR code-based payment. So we have been seeing this with Chinese payment methods as Alipay and WeChat Pay. That's where it started. But now there is a lot of kind of local payment methods initiatives. Example is Venmo from PayPal and similar that are actually building more of the payment methods in the Western countries to go with the QR code. Even if we look at that from our side, as a payment providers, we are also facilitating options like payment links where the QR code can drive a link which the person who is scanning just pastes on their mobile phone. So all of these options on the payment side is for enabling different ways to have a contactless payment either in restaurant or in hotel. That's like all these contactless cards and payment methods is only one part of the story about enabling the contactless journeys within hotels. Here, what we want to take a look in the following part of the presentation is how all the touch points with the guests actually now can be converted into touchless experiences and which are the possible solutions. So yeah, Ludo, can you follow up?
I think it's we'll go through some of the into more details on the various touch point into the hotels. But I think what is important to look at when we look to that is making sure that we have our guests feeling safe. So the communication is key. So it's, for example, looking at message before or pre-stay arrival, a pre-stay email or pre-stay arrival messages to make sure that we inform as much as we can our guests what to expect into the hotels, right? So do we have all service available on property, right? What do we need to expect with the facilities that are on site? So for example, as well, encourage mobile check-in and mobile checkout. I think that's where possible. A lot of hotels chain already moving or already moved into that area, but I think that's gonna be even more important moving forward. And I think it's finding that right balance between having a digital service and remaining a human service, right? Because hotel is all about context, it's all about having that human touch, and obviously using digital at our favor, but also to enable the new guest expectation. And to me also another important part is the empowerment of the team. So I think it's now more important than ever to make sure that each team members of the hotel are aware of the safety measure, what are the processes the hotel has put in place. I think when we, if I look at some of my previous company, like Shangri-La or IHG, one of the key things and the base to deliver successful and safe stay for the guests was really making sure to have the right level of information for the teams on site, but also a lot of hotels now are using their own website, for example, to clearly articulate across the various touch points, and right. So from the check-in down to the facilities to the restaurants, what the guest needs to expect, right? So signage, for example, in hotels are becoming very much more popular now. So to indicate to the guest what to do according to also the operations, but the local legislation.
Okay, I will take it from this slide. So what you can see here is that, look, according to the 2020 Edelman Trust Barometer report, 70% say that trusting a brand is more important today than in the past. And this is something that have been, I would say, or it is a shared belief among age groups, gender, and income. So what I wanted to tell you is that with this slide, that rebuilding the brand trust and therefore the loyalty is it is important and need to be embedded across, I would say, the three dimensions that you see here. Emotional, so that the consumer need to trust that the emotional needs have been are being safeguarded and valued. Physical, they need to trust that their physical space is safe, and of course digital, because consumer, they have to trust that via the new channel of engagement, their personal data is secure, and also when making the payment. So this is kind of, if you want, the three elements that we think that it's important to build, rebuild or relaunch the brand and the brand trust.
Yeah, so let's take
Maria,
yep.
May I insert a question, please, here
Sure.
on
Please
one of the previous slides? We were asked, I think the one slide before this, we were asked, do you have any insights on how credit card authorizations for hotel incidentals are being handled as far as contactless platforms that do not allow pre-auths or card not present transactions? So that's very technical. So Ludo, we probably won't ask you that one.
It's like how contactless, yeah, can you repeat?
Yeah, sure. How credit card authorizations for hotel incidentals are being handled, given that there are some platforms that do not allow pre-auths or card not present transactions at the hotel.
That's a very good question, because yeah, part of the message here is about enabling all these journeys, is that hotels as well have to look more towards enabling e-commerce payments, not card not present, and that you know, to be able to kind of address the person that is coming to the hotel before they will have to implement a 3DS also authorization to protect themselves from fraud and so on. So hotels, when they look at payments, will have to broaden their knowledge about addressing card not present transactions as well, if they want to grow these flows. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, I think there are a number of HEDNA members that are providing solutions, including Adyen. So without making this a commercial for anyone, I think that it's always great for our members to look at our hedna.org site and see who our members are and reach out. And if you ever need a contact at an individual company, you can always contact me or anyone at HEDNA staff to arrange introductions. Thanks. That was our one question so far, guys.
Yeah. Okay. So as we said, we are looking at the full journey, and we split also the parts into what happens on check-in, what happens in restaurants, and what happens in facilities. So first to address the check-in point, and then to look into what hotels can do, what kind of solutions they can look for to address, again, guest expectations. Looking into a survey which was commissioned in July 2020, about 80%, and that was already a number quite high before, but now it's growing. People will actually appreciate to download an app from the hotels, so if that allows them to check in and check out without going to the lobby. Of course, some countries are having requirements to scan the passport of the person and so on. And then, yeah, maybe you know, self-service and kiosk is also a good solution. In general, the message here is waiting in the line for check-in was never appreciated. Nowadays, it's a real demand not only to reduce waiting, but to really remove it, so people don't have to stay in line with the crowd. So this kind of solution into yeah, allowing self-service or allowing mobile apps and so on are really about, on the end, to improve the guest experience. So no more waiting lines, having increased capacity, personalized experience while greeting them in a proper way when they enter the hotel. So that's all part of every hotel, to look into what fits them, what kind of experience they want to create, and so on. From research which was commissioned before COVID started, we see these numbers are quite high, that 77% of hospitality merchants feel this is very important to reduce those queues in any premise, and then many of them are actually planning to implement. So the question here is, yeah, is that one of the potential solutions? Maybe Ludo, you want to handle this on the check-in side first before we go on the next part?
Let me unmute myself. I think that will be the most popular phrase of 2020. Yeah, I think mobile check-in and mobile checkout is part of the contactless service. But I think you also have the ability to think about, in some country, for example, some guests might be requested to fill into some specific forms, right? Particularly now, where they're coming from, where they, which country they have to. So that's also another area to look at, to digitalize, for example. So I'm seeing some hotels in Europe that started to do that according to the local requirements. So sort of a pre-registration before arrival, so that you can collect the right information and sort of ease that process for the guest. Now, I think we're entering into the touch-free food service, which is another area. It's an important area for our industry. So I think most of the trends that we've been seeing in the last few years. So if I look at some of the hotels, for example, particularly, I've seen it a lot going on in Asia, where using QR code and mobile app, not only to see the menu, but also to order, right? So where one hotel in Hong Kong, they had different outlets, and the guests were downloading a mobile app and then pass their order through that mobile app, so that there's a minimum touch with the from a service perspective. But also we'll have to rethink about room service, right? So how the hotels will need to handle that. So some of the process that we or I have seen is, for example, avoid contact with the guests. So the most obvious thing is having outside of the room. But then what needs to important to look at is that how do we capture the data from the guests? Because if everybody remember, you had to sign a receipt in the past. So how do we make sure we can digitalize that part? And then obviously not only the digital part, but also how we can make sure to maintain safe distancing and having the right measure into the hotel, right? So how do you handle the breakfast queue, for example, and making sure that you inform ahead, maybe what's some of the timing, so that you can split around the guests on different times in the morning to make sure that you can avoid crowd. Having signage as well, both on the floor to make sure that there's that safe distancing and those safety measure that are really being implemented, and the guests can feel safe. The other point that is interesting that I was looking in few hotels is that there's an increased trend, and I think we'll touch that upon a bit here, of people ordering food from the outside. So giving some flexibility as well for the guest to bring his own food into the room, right? And some hotels, for example, are allowing guests to bring their own food, and then even providing service to them by sanitizing cutlery and glasses and giving a bit of a service, so that the guests can also enjoy a bit of flexibility when it comes to the hotel. So really the in-room service. Some luxury hotels are thinking to fine dining in room service, right? So changing that and having that fine dining experience directly into the room. Yeah, so these are some of the data that we around booking from third party and food delivery platform. So expected to reach 475 billion in 2025. And obviously, I think it's an obvious thing. It's increasing. It's an increasing trend in all the markets. So you see here some data on the frequency that an increase of food delivery with COVID. Can move to the next slide.
So I thought, Chiara, maybe you want to add a bit on this one.
Yeah, well, I think it's, I think just to add on this, it's not a surprise, okay, that with the lockdown measure and businesses, you know, that had to close, that online food delivery platform have seen really an increase in spending and order frequency. And maybe what is important to say that some trends are here most probably to stay. And most probably our behavior has changed and will not go back. So I think we will still mix when we are allowed finally to go out and have, you know, to eat. In a restaurant, of course, we will still doing, but still people would use these third-party aggregators also for, you know, for having food at home. But the same way, another behavior that now when we go to the restaurant nowadays, we are checking menu with QR codes. And most probably it's something that will be here to stay, because I don't think that even in the future, when finally COVID is over, we will ever touch again a menu just in case. So I think there are some behavior or some learning that are really here to stay. And what we saw as well is many hotels did reinvent themselves, even during the lockdown measure, with the food, I would say food delivery. And I think it was quite smart. So I think it's something, it's usually it's a big opportunity as well for hotels.
Yeah, and I think on that space, a lot of what we're seeing as well, and that's during the pandemic, a lot of, like, particularly in the luxury segment, a lot of the chefs were doing videos on, you know, how you can prepare fine dining at home. So I think that's also maybe less from a contactless perspective, but another way of engagement with the customer to communicate.
Definitely.
Continue and keep both in the communication, especially during COVID. I think so that part of using the resources in such a difficult time is also continue to communicate that engagement on social media. And it's interesting because it's like some very famous chef here in France again, but all around the world that have done an incredible job on sort of sharing their experience with the guests.
Yeah, so I think we touched on most points of what we have in the slide. So yeah, I think we already discussed all this about the room service and how we can offer convenience and how we can engage with the guests in hotels.
Marija, may I ask a question? Oh, what?
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the video.
Interesting video to watch, but it's about initiative where what we already mentioned, where Michelin star chefs are actually going into hotels to serve socially distant dinner in the rooms of the hotels, and that's yeah, one way how to, you know, find a way in this situation. Yeah, sorry, can you go with the question?
Yeah, my question back to the room service, and I stayed in a couple of hotels in the last 8 months, and by a couple I mean 2. And I've ordered in food because the hotels at the restaurants were closed, and I ordered, you know, from, you know, in the US, Uber Eats or Grubhub. And I guess the question is, long term, does that become a standard process where hotels will start to effectively outsource their kitchens to local restaurants in the area? And then from a payment perspective, you know, obviously all of those transactions are going, you know, are not involving the hotel. And, you know, I guess a question for Ludo: have you heard of hoteliers that are starting to contemplating almost a white label of a delivery app to process the payment, you know, obviously increase a little bit of the or increase their revenue a little bit by a rev share or something like that?
Yeah, so what we saw, for example, if I think about some of the key markets like China that has been hit first with the pandemic, there was definitely a rise of food delivery, right? The hotels were playing that part to keep the operation going. So definitely there's a rise adoption of this platform for the from the hotel. But I think I'm not, what I see as well, I see that as an opportunity to reinvent the room service with a more customized experience. Like, so we saw the video of that fine dining experience you can get into into your room, right? So I think that's becomes also a great argument to stay engaged with your guest, and obviously opening up, because most of the cities can be closed or people are home, using the facility of the hotel to serve the community, right? So hotels, for example, in various markets, have been also at the center of providing foods for safety worker, hospital workers. So that's a lot what we have seen as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we mentioned already QR codes on tables. This is another one coming from a more of a casual setting, but then it's very interesting what already Chiara said, like, is this going to go away, or are we going to get very used to it? Because on the end of the day, this is becoming popular because, yeah, as a consumer, you don't have to wait to order, you don't have to wait to pay. But in the same time, also, maybe the restaurant can communicate more through this kind of menu. And then you can also, again, cost on operational costs can reduce because you don't have as many people to serve your guests. So it's very interesting to observe how this trend will remain, and what actually gonna, the whole service about first waiting to order and then waiting to pay will go into, I did everything, I got my food, and I move further with my plans for today. So yeah, this was one, just again, another restaurant here in Amsterdam. Here I have also mentioned again the mobile app, because again, survey kind of coming from July 2020 shows that about 50% of people will consider like more likely to actually go to the restaurant if they get this kind of option, because it sounds very convenient, and it sounds like you don't have to touch anything in the restaurant. So those are coming together as options for improving this food service in the hotels. And now back to Ludovic with commenting on the facilities in the hotels.
Yeah, I think here we touch the some of the area like the leisure facilities, and think about fitness centers and swimming pool and sort of other area of the property. So definitely, maybe we can move to the next slide. But what we've been seeing a lot from a hotel perspective is really changing the way that these areas are organized, right? So there's definitely a need to ensure that safety distancing are respected. So, for example, a lot of hotels they're still permitted, because unfortunately things varies by country, right? So what you can keep open and what you cannot keep open. But I think what we're seeing as well a lot is, for example, in fitness center, you could either pre-book your space, right? So that's increasingly popular, because hotels might have capacity limitation they have to respect. So then that's where digital could help, right? So how do you make sure that you can put that from a digital format? I think I go back to one of the points we made before on increasing the communication about the safety enhanced standard or enhanced measure that the hotels are putting together in your pre-arrival messages or whatever communication you can have with the guests, right? So making sure that even when you present your hotels on various channels, that's because we talk about distribution. So making sure that we do really a good job to communicate what the hotels will need, what the guests will need to expect and face. What are the facilities that are open, what are the closed, and what to expect when using when using those facilities. And then obviously you have the most obvious things, which is like, and some of the one of the things that we've seen in some of the fitness center is obviously communicate to the guests around how much time they get disinfected. What is the, making sure that we clearly communicate there's social distancing into the, for example, in the fitness center. It goes down to the communication and making sure that that this gets communicated to the guest.
Yeah, and again, from a payments perspective, here is what we are used to with these facilities around, either you're in the pool or in the spa, wherever. When it comes to the point of payments, then again, is you need to either sign a bill or get different ways, or just give your room number. The question is, what kind of technology again can be used, or ways to reduce these touch points. This drawing is one of the technologies, wearables for payments. So all the hotels have to answer these questions around solutions, of course, themselves. But this is one option. And let's summarize.
Okay, so I think we've been reviewing some of the key insights of contactless payments. So we saw that definitely, I think Chiara said it well at the beginning. Some of these trends are here to stay. I think one of the trends we can see long term is that digitalization and digital service will be are here to stay. I think it's key to me. It's key to ensure that you continue to communicate, but also understand. And that's why maybe I seek Marija and Chiara some of the responses. What are the area to be focused on, right? So when particularly for you guys, when we talk around payments, what are the priority to look at, right? When a hotel needs to implement contactless payments, right? What is the solution to look at, and what are key consideration maybe to look when planning for those investment and for those changes?
Yeah, from my perspective here is, again, of course, we gave a lot of insights into the contactless acceptance with card present. We also showed that the cash is going away, and if you, as much as you payment method you accept, as much as you, for example, are having ways that the person in the can pay with Apple Pay or with Alipay or whatever they've been used to, that's better. And in the same time, we already got this question from the audience about what that means when you are enabling a mobile app kind of journeys, what it means when you do e-commerce journeys. So these are the parts that maybe many hotels haven't thought about before, because they just got the terminal and card present transactions in the hotel, and that sounded as enough. But now if they want to innovate, and if they want to look at various ways to enable their guests and payments, then they have to start being more educated also on the e-commerce side, or card not present payments, and they have to get educated on fraud prevention and so on. So at least from implementation on payment side, that's what we are seeing as a priority to look into.
Yeah, I would say definitely I want to stress what Marija is saying. I think that so there are definitely promising signs that people want to consumer spend in terms of, I would say, travel and spending. It's key that I would say on the hotel side, they use the insights available to better understand consumer and acknowledge as well the conscious mindset they might have in terms of payment protection and flexibility and health. So definitely investing on contactless payment, I think it's key for the entire journey, for everything. So I think that also avoiding queue to pay and so on, I think it's extremely important. Also to address the consumer need, and in order to welcome them again back into the hotels, and and even, you know, to feel safe, I would say secure in, you know, in within big, I would say also big chains and so on. That is, you know, extremely important for us as an industry to have everyone back as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I think from my side, what we'll add is that making sure that the communication and the teams are trained around whatever the programs and the safety measure and that are being implemented at health level, right? So particularly even your client face team, you're even thinking to the sales team, for example, making sure that everyone is able to speak about the changes that we are seeing. And the measure that has been taken into the hotels, right? So this is going to be increasingly important, particularly when recovery will start and meetings, for example, and groups will start again. So be able for those teams as well to articulate, right? What are the various measures put in place into the hotel is going to be key.
Thanks, guys. One question that you've sort of touched on, but I think is sort of important. If you look at the absolute lack of resources that hoteliers have now because of, you know, all of the cutbacks, I mean, how do they prioritize this? I mean, what are the do we go at them and say you have to do contactless payments because it's sort of a necessity to survive in this environment, or how would you recommend the hoteliers prioritize these things?
Yeah, I think, well, that's a good question. So, but I think it's really looking at what are the key points that needs to probably to reduce touching services where you can digitalize. I'm thinking, for example, in an operation environments, how can you make sure that to use some of the communication platform that are on social, like WhatsApp, etc., that to enable service on property. I think that's one of the important area. But to me as well is investing on training, investing on making sure that there's the appropriate information at hotel level to ensure that the guests are informed about safety. Definitely, probably mobile check-in, mobile checkout will be an important part to look at. But I think enabling as well digital payments not only will help with COVID, but will also support any future development, right? So I think probably regardless of COVID, people are moving into using digital payments. So I think that's probably one or two areas to look at. Marija, anything you want to add?
Apparently not. So with that,
no, I think sorry. I think just one point. I think, look, it's really based on the hotel. So I think that can rely on their partners. I would say the payment provider, the acquirer, really to see how they can improve the journey. How to prioritize? Look, I think there was a recent Focusrite report that they were showing that people, or consumer, are feeling more, if you want, comfortable, maybe traveling or staying in a small hotel towards bigger one because of the different, you know, touch point, the different people and so on. So I think that from an hotel perspective, definitely they should see this as an opportunity to, you know, so that people can, you know, can really see that there are no barriers to go also to I would say to stay in a bigger hotel, or you know, preferring other option than staying in a hotel because they think that it's too crowded, or they have to queue, or they have, you know. So definitely I think should be really a priority to make sure that people is coming back in, I would say, in a safe way. So it's really up to each, I would say, of the property to take this decision. But I think it's key to work on consumer confidence at the end.
Thank you. And I think that is our full list of questions for today. So with that, I would really like to thank our three excellent presenters, panelists, Ludo, Maria, and Chiara. And with that, we'll wind up this webinar. And our next one is scheduled for Thursday, November 17th. We look forward to seeing you all then. Have a great day.